The ATN X-Sight 5 versus the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro. Let's get into it. In May of this year, ATN released the X-Sight 5 series, the long-awaited update to their X-Sight 4K Pro line of electronic scopes. I've used the 4K Pro on all my hunting and pest control videos, so let's see how these guys stack up against one another. Is it worth the money? Or do you stick with what we used to have? Let's get to it. One of the first things that I notice when I'm holding these two guys together is the X-Sight 5 is significantly lighter. It doesn't really seem that it's that much lighter when you look at the actual specs, but the big difference here is I had to add on the ABL 1000 laser rangefinder in order to get the full functionality that they now offer in one package for the ATN X-Sight 5 LRF version. So this makes the difference significantly lighter between the two. In addition to being lighter, they are also a little sleeker, as we can see. Look at that profile between the X-Sight 4 right here with the ABL attached and X-Sight 5 with the LRF model. One thing to note also, the X-Sight 5 is a little longer than the X-Sight 4K, and that is because the X-Sight 4K Pro is a 3x14x scope, and the X-Sight 5 here is a 5x25. We do lose the excellent mechanical zoom knob that was present on the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro. Honestly, I would have gladly paid $100 more to have that physical knob on the ATN X-Sight 5. Yeah, easy $100. Just let me pay it. In the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro, you used to have to do a Bluetooth pairing between the ABL module and the actual scope. That's no longer required for the ATN X-Sight 5 LRF version because the laser rangefinder is built in. No need to add batteries to the laser rangefinder or do any Bluetooth pairing. All that's taken care of for you, so that's a nice upgrade. One of the other things that is kind of noticeable about this after using both of these guys together is the buttons on the ATN X-Sight 5 LRF are a little close together. When you're hunting, you know, there's more buttons. There are an additional 3 buttons on the ATN X-Sight 5 versus the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro, and it makes it a little bit difficult to know exactly which button you're pressing when you are trying to use the scope without looking at it. In the 4K Pro, you could never get true 4K video. Yes, it used a 4K sensor, you know, which is true, but the video that was recorded was always 1920 by 1080. In the X-Sight 5, you can actually get full 4K video recording, which is a pretty nice feature. But it also gives you video recording in 2 additional resolutions. One of those resolutions is, let me just look at my phone here. The 3 resolutions that are available are 3840 by 2880, and that is recorded in 30 frames per second. The mid resolution is 2048 by 1520, and that is recorded in 60 frames per second. And then you have 1920 by 1440 resolution, and that is recorded in up to 120 frames per second, or it is recorded in 120 frames per second. which can give you some slow motion. The 60 and the 120s can give you some slow motion effects. There is also a 240 frames per second mode that can be used if you use the RAV feature, which is the recoil activated video record. However, you cannot select 240 frames per second manually by using manual recording. You only can do it with doing the RAV feature, the recoil activated video. In addition to the higher video resolutions, there are also a few additional features. One of those features is the ability to use custom reticles. Yes, that's right. You know, you can go into ATN's website and get to a link that would allow you to configure and design your own custom reticle. Here I'll show you a photo, a link of one of the reticles that I designed to kind of make it similar to my N2 shooter logo. Nice feature, you know. Is it necessary? No, you know. Really, we only need a dot. You know, especially if you're using the ballistics calculator, we don't need to use holdovers or anything like that. But it is nice that you can go in and do that, and kind of adds a little bit of flair. I suggest anybody go in and glance over at some of the reticles other users have created, and boy, you'll see some seriously Klingon-looking reticles. Here, I'm going to do a cutaway, show you one of those reticles that I found, and I did a modification to it and added a little bit more to it. Yeah, you can really come out with some crazy-looking reticles. But one of the nicest features, I believe, with the custom reticle is you can do multicolor reticles. That's a really nice feature. So you can have a reticle that has specific holdover marks at, you know, that are in one in red, one in green, one in blue, one in yellow. That's a nice feature to be able to have a multi-colored reticle. Another feature that they have for the ATN X-Sight is in their ballistics calculator. Now, the majority of the settings that are used in the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro are the same for the ATN X-Sight 5, but there is one big difference. There is a feature that allows you to compensate for lead. So that's kind of nice, you know, as you're scanning across the range and you're trying to get on a target, you got a deer running or something of that sort. Based on how fast you are swinging your gun and based on the distance that you are ranged and the frames, the feet per second velocity of the round that you're shooting, it will do a lead on your reticle so that it will put it right where it needs to be. So you don't have to go in and in your mind say, okay, that's 350 yards out, you know, I'm shooting suppressed 300 blackout, kind of slow. I'm gonna have to lead in, you know, 2 foot with as fast as I think this thing is running. No, it can kind of do that feature for you. Also, here's a series of video tests that I did at different resolutions so you can see the difference in zoom from 3 to 7.5 to 14x, and then the extended resolution on the X-Sight 4K Pro 3 to 14 is 37.6 x. And I also did the same thing on the X-Sight 5 at 5, 12.5, and 25x, and also the extended resolution, which is 50x. So take a look at this.
All right, let's get to the range.
Retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.
Unfortunately, so here goes the beginning of the problems with this scope. So I've been talking about all these fantastic things about this scope, right? You know, excellent features, you know, slim, lightweight, all in one package, you know, no battery issues, no Bluetooth linkage issues, you know. What are the downsides? With this version of firmware, there are a number of issues. I'm going to list all these issues right down here just so that we can see the issues that I found that don't work. Not test recoil activated video with using air guns because the recoil activated calibration, RAV calibration, does not work. I was able to get RAV calibration to work if I go into RAV and smack on the back of the scope, you know, but I couldn't get RAV calibration to work with my 30 cal PCP FX Maverick air gun. Maybe I could get it to work if I put it on my 357 Bulldog, but which kicks more. But I could not get that to work with my 30 cal FX Maverick. So since RAV calibration wouldn't work, I could not get recoil activated video to work. Since I couldn't get recoil activated video to work, I don't know how the 120 frames per second video looks. Custom reticles, big feature, headline feature. You can store you can go and create the reticles on ATN's website. You can download those reticles to your computer. From there, you need to know that you need to take those reticles and take them off of your computer, and then you need to put them on your SD card and load it into your scope. But you have to put that into a directory called reticles, and then you have to put that directory on your SD card. Then you can load those reticles into the scope. Unfortunately, once you choose a reticle that was custom designed by you, or you pulled one off of ATM's site and used someone else's, that reticle does not persist between power cycles. Again, so if those issues were the only two issues, then probably be happy with how things are performing, and you can go on ahead and get through a normal hunting session, pesting session, and you'll be doing okay. But I'm an air gun shooter, N2 shooter, air gun shooter, and I use the profile and the ballistic calculator system of ATN heavily. Used it on every shot that I've taken on my X-Sight 4K Pro, and plan to do the same on my X-Sight 5. However, when you are creating your profiles in the X-Sight 5 LRF, I could not rename the profiles. Well, just go to the app and just rename them, right? Well, the Connect 5 app has not been released. So you just got profile, 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 profile across the two guns that I had calibrated and put in my ballistics information in. So that was a big problem.
So here we can see that I am pulled up the scope internal website on my phone, doing a little bit of hacking here, but I can select resolutions, select frame rates built in with the resolutions. I can make changes to the scope settings. All this stuff is available to do. Some of the things aren't available to do, like if I went to the profiles, I can't rename profiles, but the majority of the operations of the scope would allow me to do this. I have no idea why ATN did not release the Connect 5 app, at least with this functionality. This would have been a much easier, at least something working to get to the customer so that we can operate our scopes over our phone.
Again, this scope will not hold zero. I have taken this scope, I've used the X-Sight 4K Pro, I've done one shot zero, I know exactly how that works. I've done the same thing with this scope. It seems to work okay, but I noticed a serious bug that if you decided to take a photo with the ATN X-Sight 5, you would see the reticle shift when you get done taking the photo. And at first you see it and you're like, is that just an anomaly? Does it go back after everything? No, after you take your photo, it does not go back. That is a big problem. And because of that, when I was doing my 100-yard testing, I was just off. It was so bad. The shift was so bad, I was off paper. That's how bad the shift was. I was shooting a target probably 2 foot by 4 foot, and I was off paper to the left and right. I was probably not as much, up and down, but left and right, I was off paper. You're gonna shoot a deer in the ass. You're gonna possibly miss a coyote, or just nick his tail. You're off paper. The one feature that a scope has to hold every time, is it has to hold zero. And this is not the case. So at this point,
some additional bugs that are happening with the ATN X-Sight 5 LRF 5-25 are in 2 of the 3 video recording resolutions, there was no audio. Yeah, you get audio only on 1 of the 3 resolutions. And the last and probably the most important bug is lockup after lockup after lockup. On my range day testing. I was at the range for probably 2 hours. I probably had to do a hard reboot on the scope probably 4 times, and multiple other times the scope would have defects and bugs with icons overlaid on top of one another, garbled text, and eventually those things would lead to a lockup. So this version of firmware, very buggy. Got an updated version of firmware, and with that updated version of firmware, the same issues held with less frequent lockups, but still would lock up. I did get audio in all 3 resolutions, but guess what? No reticle at all, and ballistic calculator was totally busted. I'll list that version of firmware here. I can't recall that off the top of my head, but yeah. It was busted so bad that I had to send my scope back to ATN. So, what's the verdict? Is it a keeper? She sure does look nice, doesn't she? Well, hate to break it to you, but X-Sight 5 right now is a hard pass. So, they did a lot of good things with this scope. They really did. The lighter weight, the sleek housing, the integrated laser rangefinder. They did a good job designing the housing and the hardware. Scope boots up pretty fast too. But unfortunately, that's about where the good things end for this scope. Well, I take that back, because you know what? They did do a better job with the sensor, because color fidelity is much better than the X-Sight 4K Pro in day and night modes. In night mode, your gray gradations are significantly higher than the X-Sight 4K Pro. That really helps when you're trying to detect game, prey, pest. 4K resolution looks really, really good. Definitely a big improvement. Too bad you can't hear audio when you're recording in 4K. Also, you can't hear audio if you're recording in the resolution that gives you 120 frames per second. You can only get audio in the middle resolution. It's kind of funny. What else is wrong? No RAV calibration.
big feature for air gunners. No RAV, 240 frames per second video recording. And my thing that I'm really wondering is, when I go back and look at the ATN marketing commercials, the 240 frames per second RAV video that they show isn't even really from the point of the view of the shooter. So what camera did they use to record that? I bet you it wasn't X-Sight 5. ATN's Achilles heel, the firmware sucks. I do product development for a living. This firmware sucks. Should have never been released to the public. At this point in time, I just can't recommend the X-Sight 5. And also, yeah, the Connect 5 mobile app, supposed to be a huge improvement over Obsidian 4. Well, I guess it did improve because it's not even here. It has not been released over almost 90 days after the scope has been released. We still don't have a mobile app. I check every day. I check every day for firmware updates too. No firmware updates. Radio silence from ATN. This is not how you treat your customers. This is not how you treat your customers. So at this point, oh yeah, I forgot another thing. That other flagship feature, just like RAV, 240 frames per second video, custom crosshairs, big thing. That's what I was using when I was coming up here. I was using a custom crosshair that I had designed, which would be excellent for being able to do that is excellent for crossbow hunters. But guess what? Your crosshairs do not persist after you do power cycles. If you turn the scope off, turn it back on, you have to re-import the custom crosshairs every time you power cycle your scope. Again, something else that's unacceptable. So at this point in time, if you are an air gun shooter like myself, if you are a crossbow hunter, if you are a real steel hunter, if you're just a target shooter, pass on the X-Sight 5 right now. The scope doesn't even hold zero. After you do your one-shot zero, take a photo or record video, your zero will be off. This is the base function that is non-negotiable in any scope that you own, electronic or otherwise. It has to hold zero. It has to hold zero. So right now, I just can't recommend the X-Sight 5, and I hate to say it, but a big fan of ATN and their X-Sight 4 K Pro and their Thor 4, but their X-Sight 5, it's a hard pass.